Well, I'm so thrilled to be hosting this Holly Jolly BSK podcast with our faculty and staff. And we have 3 guests with us, David Adams, Mark Medley, Abby Sizemore. So grateful for y'all to participate, first of all, putting on your lipstick and preparing your Holly Jolly moment. David Adams, let's start with you. Please share your Holly Jolly memories.
Well, I don't have a Holly Jolly moment per se, but I do have a kind of a jolly moment. That this has not been a great year. Been through a lot of things in my family and my personal life and all the things that have been going on. And they've been difficult. But this was the year that I discovered how awesome it is to be able to go to class and see those students waiting for me when I got there. You know, no matter how bad the day was, no matter how rough life had been, I know that frequently, every week, I was going to get to see those faces on the screen of students who are going through all their own things and sharing all their own struggles in their own church. And it was really something to look forward to. It was a real ministry to me to know that I could be there with those students. And I just can't express the amount of joy that's come from that now that I've realized I'm getting so much back from that time I get to spend with them. And so if anything else this year is going to be called out for me as Holly Jolly, it's that. It's that great experience.
I think that's a wonderful memories and something that really created momentum for you in a really hard year. And I know our students will appreciate hearing that the faculty and staff actually appreciate seeing them in class as well.
Yes.
Well, are there any other memories you would like to share?
Mostly they're stories we can't tell in public about different folks.
Okay, there'll be a rated R version of Holly Jolly.
A lot of things happen behind the scenes at a seminary. Many of the things we can talk about, many of the things we can't. But those are, again, they're live human moments that make life special, especially at a time when we struggle a bit. You know, life can be hard for people. And so those great moments that pop up just by accident most of the time, those are worth remembering, you know, even as they go. And I'm glad that I was able to be along for the ride and have a lot of those.
Well, we appreciate you sharing, and we look forward to the other version of those stories at some point. Mark Medley,
Yes.
We are looking forward to your Holly Jolly memory or moments. Please share with us.
Sure. My Holly Jolly moment or memory is from graduation back in May. And what was so thrilling, I mean, graduation's a great time anyway. You're celebrating student success, student accomplishments. Students are graduating with their degrees. This year, it was, I think, uniquely special for me because there were 2 students who I finally got to meet in person, who I had only seen on the screen. So Zachary Fraley, who I think is the first student who started when we went into an online modality completely to graduate. And so he showed up for graduation in person. It was great to see Zachary. He was taller than I imagined he was. And that was fantastic. And then Cassie Bewley came, and she will graduate this coming May, but she decided she wanted to be a part of graduation because she knew Zachary. They'd seen each other on the screen, and to see Cassie, and Cassie's a lot taller than I imagined that she is. But there was other students who were local from the Lexington and Louisville area who were also present in person. And the energy among the students, and seeing that energy, as they were finally seeing each other in person, when they'd only seen each other mainly on the screen, and was just fantastic. It was just great. It made for a wonderful, wonderful day. Probably the most memorable graduation in a long time for me at BSK. So that was a really, really wonderful moment.
I'm sensing this really lovely theme of incarnation.
Yeah, exactly.
Of when we actually get to be in community, whether that's uniting our spirits in class after a difficult day or being present with one another in flesh and blood. And Mark, I'm curious if they all thought, oh, he's a little shorter in person.
They probably did. Yeah. They probably thought I was a lot shorter than I am. I'm actually pretty short anyway, so...
Well, thank you for sharing that Holly Jolly memory/moment. And we're looking forward to graduation coming up in 2024, where we get to see more of our students graduate and to be together.
Exactly.
Well, Abby, thank you for joining us on Holly Jolly Moments at BSK. Please share your memories with us?
Yes. So I have several memories from this year. It's been a very momentous year for me personally and professionally. So I kind of thought of these holly jolly memories in those two different capacities that are obviously very overlapping, but have their own memories attached. This is the year that I moved from Lexington to Louisville with my family. And something that was very comforting to me through that whole process, which was very anxiety provoking in general, was knowing that my work at BSK would be a stable place, that my work at BSK wouldn't change. I wouldn't have to move jobs. I wouldn't have to worry about talking about this transition that my family was going through with my colleagues or with my boss, that I knew that my work was going to stay the same, not only because of the partnerships and relationships and the fact that we're already established in Louisville, but also just because it was something that I could do from wherever I was, that the work I had, because of how we have BSK set up and because of the modality and the way we reach our students, I was able to do the work I was doing already in Lexington and didn't have to change a lot of that. And that brought a lot of comfort because it allowed me to be able to bounce things off of my colleagues, to be able to talk about what was going on with our move or to talk about what was happening with my husband's work and the new church he was entering into. And a lot of those connections that I had and that I obtained through that process were connections that people at BSK already had as well. And so that was really helpful for my family and comforting for us. And it's allowed me to get to know other faculty members that I've known for, going on 7 years now, but didn't know as well. And now that I've moved, there were certain people I spent my Monday through Friday with in Lexington, and now I'm here in Louisville, and I spend my Monday through Friday with Dr. Inscore Essick, and I see Jordan Conley, who's an alum of BSK, who's the pastor of this church. And so being able, and then you, Erica, in Louisville as well, and Lewis, being able to get to know other BSK people better than I had before, and having that transition from people that I was seeing in Lexington has been really fun, and it's also provided me a lot of stability. In addition to those personal memories and the impact that BSK has had on my personal life in that way, professionally, it's been a really exciting year as director of admissions, and the fact that we reached our highest enrollment ever in our history. And so that was something really exciting. It was the first year that I sort of felt in an organic way that we were really coming into who we had been trying to become for the last few years. It felt a lot more confident. We felt a lot more sure of who we were, and we were able to communicate that better to prospective students. We had a lot of growth in our certificate program. We had growth in our MDiv still as well that we've been seeing over the last few years. But this year was a year where it didn't feel like we were just trying things out and seeing what happened. We were actually seeing the fruits of our labor and seeing how that had grown our student body, and then also just grown our presence in general. I was able to go to Florida with our president, Dr. Cassady, to tour around and visit with CBF pastors through the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship and CBF ministers. And those trips, this is the second one we've done. We did one to Virginia a couple years ago. And those trips are also really great because it kind of takes us out of our space and takes us out of this bubble of being in Kentucky and lets us see the impact that BSK is having in other states and also how we're being perceived in other states. And so it's a nice change of pace and change of scenery to be outside of, maybe not a literal walls, but outside of the world that I inhabit every Monday through Friday in the minutia of applications and that kind of thing, and be able to go and be on the road and talk to people who are interested in theological education and see how BSK can help them in their journey.
Well, I know personally you have been a holly jolly person here in Louisville that I enjoy seeing on a regular basis. And so I'm glad that you are here. Yes. I'm glad that the move went smoothly. And we're so grateful for our partners in Florida and for all three of y'all for joining us on the Holly Jolly podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, welcome to the Holly Jolly podcast. My name is Erica Whitaker, and I have three wonderful faculty members, not just faculty, but professors and the president, no pressure, who are going to share their Holly Jolly 2023 memories or moments from BSK life. We're going to start with Laura. Please share with us a Holly Jolly memory moment.
Thank you. Yes, so many to choose from this year, but I decided to be that teacher and talk about one of the times that my students made me feel wonderful and jolly. This past spring, I tried a new idea in class in World Christianity where my students would produce an essay project where instead of after all the research and thinking through their arguments, instead of writing a paper, they created an art exhibit kind of object or something that they would make and create instead of write. And, I thought it was going to be pretty good. It'll be great. I told them all I wasn't going to worry and grade them so much on their art technique, but I just wanted to see their creativity and all this stuff. So I was prepared for paintings, and they did really great. And I was prepared for montages with photography, and those was also great, and just wonderful explorations. But then there was one student who definitely has a music background. He got through his discussion of Ethiopian chanting and Ethiopian Christianity, and he made a chant for us in class and sang it for us in the middle of class. And I think after that moment, and after all of the projects, pottery, all that other stuff included, after class was done, I'm pretty sure I ran up and down the hall and was like, someone made a chant in class. Someone made a song for me in class. Someone made a chant. I was like dying on the floor. I was so excited and happy. So I was just really appreciative of that moment. And there's just so many other moments that my students have just blown my mind this year, and I just love it.
That is such a great moment, and we're expecting you to chant that for us right now.
Sorry, I did not come prepared with that.
Okay, well, we will follow up with that student and see if we can get him or her on a podcast.
I have their contact information.
Lovely.
They continue to go to this school. Very happy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Laura. John, do you have a holly jolly memory moments that you'd like to share?
It took me a little longer than I thought for this memory to come to mind, but once it did, it was sort of a cascade of holly jolly moments. So, a day in the life of a BSK recruiter. I experienced this fall. I think everybody who's good at that job was busy. And so I got to go to the CBF Tennessee meeting with a banner and a bunch of flyers and a tablecloth, and I charted it out, and I'd made plans to meet a student that I'd never seen in person before. And the student picked the restaurant, and I looked around. I was going to try to get a run in that day, and I saw where the hotel was. So I had all this plan. I got up early, drove, made it there on time, and got to the hotel in plenty of time. I thought I've got a good chance to get a 3-4 mile run in here. Saw a nice hill and thought, that'll be a nice test, And so I get ready, I go out, and I'm not somebody who likes to stop running until I finish the run. And I got maybe a third of the way up this hill. It was like a mountain, and I had to walk all the way to the top. And then I thought, okay, I'll finish it out. And then there was another big hill. And so I'm worried, am I going to get back to meet this student in time and stop sweating, right? But I do make it back more slowly to the hotel, finally stop sweating, get the shower. Then I have to walk to the restaurant, and my legs are rubbery. So I get to the restaurant early, student's a little bit late. Turns out it's DeVan Franklin, who, like every other student I'm meeting in person these days, is a lot taller than me.
They're so tall.
They're so tall.
They're so tall.
Zachary Fraley, so tall. You don't know this on Zoom. So I met DeVan Franklin and thought this is going to be the highlight of my day. DeVan's wonderful on Zoom. He's wonderful in person. But it got even better because DeVan brought his daughters to lunch with us. And so we sat there, got to meet his daughters, and we talked. I think they found me surprisingly engaging as their father's professor. And then we got to play cornhole. They never played cornhole. This restaurant had a cornhole outside. And so I got to play cornhole with DeVan Franklin and his daughters in Tennessee on my wobbly legs, and then walk back to my hotel and go recruit for BSK. I don't know if there's any student yet that I got, but I talked to some really wonderful people at the CBF Tennessee gathering. So that's my holly jolly memory.
We're so glad that the Holy Spirit led you on your wobbly legs to one of our students and their family. And I asked Mark this earlier. Were they surprised that you were shorter than you may have come across on Zoom too?
No, I think I kind of exude that over the screen.
Well, thank you for sharing,
You're
John.
welcome. Thanks for hosting.
Well, David, can you share with us your holly jolly memory or moments?
I sure can. So recently, BSK moved offices from Georgetown to Lexington. And of course, in any move, you have to pack up just normal, ordinary things like books and chairs and tables and all the other things. But they're also really valuable, important, impossible to replace things. So we took extra special care when packing up the portrait that had been commissioned of Dr. Greg Earwood, the first president of BSK. And so we packed it up super carefully. And then several weeks after we got into the Lexington offices, we were going to have an open house and welcome people to come see our new space, which is excellent, by the way. And I thought, we need to make sure that Dr. Earwood's portrait is hanging, which led to the beginning of some panic because I could not find the portrait of Dr. Earwood. And we looked in every closet, in every nook and cranny. We even went in Dr. Levens' office and looked around. There was nowhere that we could find this portrait. And so I was like, did it stay on the moving truck? Did we somehow miss it when everything was getting unloaded? What did we do? And so one morning I come into the office, and there, sitting in my chair, as if he was still president, which would be cool, but was Dr. Greg Earwood in his painted portrait glory.
How did it get there?
Well, apparently I had failed to ask the one person who knew where everything was, my assistant, Ashley Morris. And someone else, maybe it was you, Laura, she had decided to ask and had found it and placed it there in the chair so it would greet me when I came in. But I have to say, I was very grateful because I've slept much better since then.
Did Ashley ever tell you where it was?
Yes, she did.
Where was it, David?
Well, apparently she has a large desk that's kind of like Hermione's purse, and it had been placed carefully underneath her desk, awaiting the time when we would hang it.
The bigger question is, have we told Dr. Earwood that we lost him for a period of time?
I don't think so. So this will be news to him.
This will be news to him. Well, what a holly jolly moment,
It was.
recovering Dr. Earwood. We are all grateful for that.
He's proudly on the wall.
Yeah.
Erica, what is your holly jolly memory of 2023?
I have had the pleasure for over 2 years to be on staff here at BSK. When I first started, I had no idea that I would end up in the Bahamas. I mean, what a rough life. If they would have said, you got to go to the Bahamas. Oh, okay, sure. Not only did I end up in the Bahamas, but I ended up in the Bahamas with you, Laura.
That is correct.
And with Anthony and Lewis and then Tammy Snyder from Florida. So there's 3 of us women, and we're all pretty pale skin, especially in correlation to our, brown skin, black skin, bohemian brothers and sisters. So we're sticking out like none other at this point. We also end up, for many reasons, sharing a room on one of the islands in the Bahamas. And you had the pleasure of being up in the loft, which we were grateful for. Nor did we explore any of the areas, including the fact that you did not have any sheets or covers on your bed up in the loft.
I did not.
And so Tammy and I were so concerned that you would be too hot up there. So we turned the air down, and we have our separate little beds on the main floor. And all night we are freezing. Tammy, bless her heart, has placed her pillow over her head because she's trying to hold in any warmth. And she's wrapped up like a mummy, like cocooned. And I'm huddling, I'm pretty sure, next to a cockroach at one point, just looking for warmth. The next morning, we all check in with each other, including our 2 dead cockroach friends who had obviously froze to death in this room. And we discovered that Laura did not have any covers, and she too was freezing because she did not have any covers. Yes, to say the least, you never know where you're going to find yourself, particularly in the BSK company, but we are grateful for the community that takes us to unknown places.
I was very happy to freeze for one night if it meant being in the Bahamas.
That's true. Suffering for the Lord.
Suffering.
Yes, indeed.
Suffering greatly.
Well, thank you. That's my holly jolly moment, and thank you all for joining us for our BSK 2023 Holly Jolly Memories and Moments.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, I hope you will take a moment to make a contribution so that we can continue to make excellent content like this podcast and so many others that we have planned. You can do so by going to bsk.edu and click on the Give button. Thank you so much for your support.